Me neither. His PowerPoints always have pictures of it. I know, they totally do. We should meet up at my house or something and go over key terms to the final.
Okay.
Are you guys in? Yeah. My house. Okay. Hey Maddie, have you finished your key terms yet?
No, I'm actually stuck on the Great Depression. Do you guys know anything about it?
No. Oh, that was when North America, Europe, and other industrialized areas were in a great economic slump from 1929 to 1939. It was the longest and most severe depression ever experienced by the industrialized Western world. The Great Depression was said to have begun with a catastrophic collapse of stock market prices on the New York Stock Exchange in October 1929. Then, the U.S. stock prices continuously fell until about 1932. This incredible decline greatly strained banks and other financial institutions, which led to a nationwide loss of confidence in their economy. In 1933, at the worst point in the Great Depression years, unemployment rates in the U.S. reached almost 25%, with more than 11 million people looking for work. Between 1930 and 1936, severe drought conditions prevailed across much of the American plains. Soil turned to dust, and large dark clouds could be seen across the horizon in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and New Mexico. This was referred to as the Dust Bowl and caused a major agricultural depression. Throughout the 30s, more than 1 million acres of land were affected by the Dust Bowl, and thousands of farmers lost their jobs, contributing to the nationwide unemployment.
In 1932, a group of angry, broke, and unemployed World War I veterans gathered outside of the Capitol building to demand immediate payment of their pension from the war. The government had promised to pay World War I veterans $1.25 for each day of service overseas, and $1 for each day served in the U.S. The payment wasn't due until 1945, but the 15,000 unemployed veterans that gathered outside the Capitol building demanded it early.
But the Depression wasn't just hard on farmers and veterans. Unemployed workers from all professions lived in Hoovervilles, and shanty towns sprung up all across America. These were areas in which people gathered and constructed makeshift homes out of boxes, packing crates, abandoned cars, and scraps of wood.
So, what did the government do about the Great Depression?
Almost all nations sought to protect their domestic production by imposing tariffs, raising existing ones, and setting quotas on foreign imports. All of the economic stress also led to the election of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who ended up increasing government regulation and massive public works programs. The Depression made many people lose their jobs, and their family farms went bankrupt.
Oh, so that's when the New Deal started?
Exactly. When President Franklin D. Roosevelt took office in 1933, he acted swiftly to try to stabilize the economy and provide jobs and relief to those who were suffering. Over the next 8 years, the government instituted a series of experimental projects and programs known collectively as the New Deal that aimed to restore some measures of dignity and prosperity to many Americans.
The Golden Gate Bridge was built to connect San Francisco and Marin County. It was built as part of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal program. The Golden Gate Bridge supplied many men with opportunities for jobs. During the Great Depression, around 13 million people were unemployed and in desperate need of a job. Because there was such a large need for jobs, people would take any job that they could get. The plans for the Golden Gate Bridge were made before the Great Depression, but the construction didn't occur until after the stock market had crashed. The bridge was eventually built towards the end of the Great Depression, when it became part of the New Deal project. Well, President Roosevelt had evening radio addresses to the American public, which he called his fireside chats. These chats made him an intimate president in people's lives and greatly impacted the lives of all Americans.
A few people who have not recovered from their fear may again begin withdrawals. Let me make it clear to you that the banks will take care of all needs, except, of course, the hysterical demands of hoarders, and it is my belief that hoarding during the past week has become an exceedingly unfashionable pastime in every part of our nation. It needs no prophet to tell you that when the people find that they can get their money, that they can get it when they want it for all legitimate purposes, the phantom of fear will soon be laid. People will again be glad to have their money where it will be safely taken care of and where they can use it conveniently at any time. I can assure you, my friends, that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than it is to keep it under the mattress. The success of our whole national program depends, of course, on the cooperation of the public, on its intelligent support.
Oh, and directly after that, there was a legendary session known as the 100 Days. This was when Congress enacted 15 major bills that focused on 4 major problems: banking failures, agriculture overproduction, the business slump, and soaring unemployment. The banking reform. FDR declared a national bank holiday, closing all the banks, and called Congress into a special session. The Glass-Steagall Act restored public confidence and prohibited banks from making risky or unsecured investments with the deposits of ordinary people. Roosevelt removed the U.S. Treasury from the gold standard in June 1933. Agricultural and manufacturing. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, AAA, began direct governmental regulation of the farm economy for the first time. That solved the problem of overproduction. The AAA provided farmers to cut the production of wheat, cotton, corn, hogs, rice, tobacco, and dairy products. The National Recovery Administration, NRA, set up several separate self-governing private associations in 600 industries. The housing crisis. More than 500,000 Americans lost their homes between 1930 and 1932. The Homeowners Loan Corporation, the Federal Housing Administration, and the subsequent Housing Act of 1937 set the foundation for the broad expansion of home ownership. Unemployment relief. The Civil Works Administration, CWA, provided jobs for 4 million Americans, repairing bridges, building highways, and constructing public buildings. A longer-term program, the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, mobilized 250,000 young men to do reforestation and conservation work. These vigorous actions, taken by Roosevelt and Congress, did help to halt the downward economic spiral of the Hoover years, stabilized finances, and sent a message of hope to all the nation. For all that, however, the New Deal did not break the grip of the Great Depression.
So if it's so bad in the United States, what's going on in the rest of the world?
Well, nations in Europe instituted authoritarian militaristic governments led by powerful dictators like Hitler. Germany had been struggling under the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, and extreme German nationalism included harsh racism towards Jews and other non-German minorities. Economic depression, fear of communism, labor unrest, and rising unemployment fueled Hitler's rise to extreme popularity, and the German legislature granted him dictator powers. In 1936, Hitler and Italy's Mussolini formed an alliance called the Rome-Berlin Axis. By 1940, Axis forces had invaded much of Eastern Europe, and by 1941 the European war was in full swing. At first, America didn't want to join the war or send only soldiers overseas, but on December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, killing 2,400 Americans and destroying over 200 planes. Pearl Harbor united the American people, and days after the attack, the Senate voted unanimously for war and the House voted 388 to 1.
Wait, so how did the U.S. mobilize the fighting source?
Well, to fight the war, the government mobilized tens of millions of soldiers, civilians, and workers, coordinated on a scale unprecedented in U.S. history. During World War II, armed forces enlisted more than 15 million men. No other military conflict had so many American citizens serve in the armed forces. Among the most instrumental soldiers were the Native American code talkers. They were the Navajo speakers that communicated orders to fleet commanders. The Japanese intelligence couldn't decipher the code because it was based on the dying language of the Navajo. Navajo code talkers received more than 800 messages without error. About 350,000 American women were enlisted in the military. Female officers couldn't command to men.
Oh, great. Thanks, Cole.
No problem. Anything for you.
Can you help me with one more thing? I'm just a little confused on this whole history thing. What did the U.S. citizens do that weren't part of the military?
Well, Maddie, as millions of working-age citizens joined the military, the nation faced a critical labor shortage. Consequently, many women and African Americans joined the industrial workforce, taking jobs unavailable to them before the conflict.
Wait, what was going on in the political world during World War II?
Yes, I actually know this one. LOL. In Franklin D. Roosevelt's State of the Union address, he called for a second Bill of Rights that would guarantee all Americans access to education, jobs, food, clothing, decent housing, and medical care. Congress created new government benefits only for military veterans known as GIs. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, which was an influential program properly known as the GI Bill of Rights. It created jobs, medical care, and other public programs for the men and women who served in the armed forces.